Welcome back to the Cardboard Crash Course. Today is exciting because we're going to be doing our very first spirit study on a spread of Rampant Green. This is from the Spirit Island base game, a game that I've recently really fallen in love with and been playing with my friends. We're going to be talking about its complexity, its play style. I'm going to be talking about all of its cards and all of the ways it should be playing, and we're going to talk a little bit about strategy towards the end of the video. This is going to be shorter than my other faction guides for Twilight Imperium because, to be honest, there's not quite as many moving parts in Spirit Island, but I think we're going to have really good insight in a different way to play, maybe, than you're used to with a spread of Rampant Green. Please let me know what you think of this video and what spirits to do next, as I'm really interested in doing a spirit study on every single spirit in this game, all the way from the base game to Nature Incarnate. So without further ado, let's check this guy out. It is a moderate complexity spirit with a good little range of powers here. It has medium offense and control, really low fear, decent utility, but that defense rating is all the way through the roof. I think that's pretty fair, especially with one of its innate powers you see on the front side of the board. It has a playstyle that explains that it's decent at dealing with towns, and subsequently cities, but it's really bad at handling those little explorers who can get through the forest just fine. It can get presence onto the board faster than most other spirits, and as we'll see in just a minute, it can also help them get it on faster as well, which is probably its most important ability. That extra presence is good for targeting with Choke the Land with Green. It's a phenomenal special rule, but be careful not to destroy sacred sites because it really needs them for one of its innate abilities as well. It has a setup that you put 2 presence on your starting board, 1 in the highest number wetland, and 1 in a jungle without any Dahan. Now after setup, we'll be looking at the front side of the board for the rest of the game. This, as always, has a growth, presence track, and all of its innate powers and special rules. So let's check out those special rules first. I think that's a great way of introducing the spirit. Its first special rule, as we talked about, is Choke the Land with Green. This says whenever invaders would ravage or build in a land with your sacred site, which, keep in mind, sacred sites are those double presence, you may skip it by destroying one of those in that land instead. And destroyed presence always just goes off to the side, because you can always steadily regenerate. Its second special rule. When adding presence to the board via growth, you can instead use your destroyed presence. If the island is healthy, which is that healthy island card here, do so freely. But if it is blighted, do so by spending 1 energy per presence you'll replace. So, as you can see, these are going to combo together. You'll always be destroying them in order to cancel the invader's actions. And, like it was talking about, you won't be able to cancel the explore action, just ravaging and building. Which you won't be able to stop the explorers, but that's okay. And then, after destroying it, you can steadily regenerate back to the board. So don't be afraid to destroy your presence, especially because of this growth ability. So in Spirit Island, you always do your growth before your presence track. So this is a very special growth track because it's unlike any others. You have an always as well as your pick one. You always add a presence to a jungle or wetland within 2 range of another presence you already have. That's important because it doesn't matter what you choose, even if you choose the option that already places a presence, you will always be removing something from your track. That being said, you can also either reclaim cards and gain a power card, add a presence and get +1 card play this turn, or gain a power card and 3 energy. So if you pick that second one, not only will it open up more options early on, because you only have 1 play in the first couple, you will also be adding 2 presence a turn, being able to create those sacred sites for the all-enveloping green. But before we discuss that, let's look at the rest of its presence track. It starts at 0 energy and ends at 3. And it starts at 1 card play and ends at 4. But somewhere along those lines, it gets 2 plants on the top track. Starting at 0 energy really isn't starting at 0. Because of that always add, it doesn't matter what you pick, so you always gain access to that 1 energy if you want. And it also has a couple of 0 energy cards, as we'll discuss in a minute. So if you really want to, you can always pick the second, go double on the bottom, and still have the ability to play 2 cards even though you have 0 energy. Really flexible spirit. That being said, it doesn't actually end with too much energy here, but because you have that always place, you don't have to worry about building up presence if you want to select that gain energy boost as the final growth option. If you do end up with that 4 card plays, you're going to be absolutely demolishing as a spread of Rampant Green, even if you have to pay to be able to regenerate with that steady regeneration. This is a really, really solid top, and I want to discuss the innate powers here as well. Your first innate power is Creeper's Tear into Mortar. It's a 0 range slow power, which means you have to select the land itself that you have your presence in, but it can target any land with no restrictions. So 1 moon and 2 green to do 1 damage to a town or city, and then if you get another of each, you get to repeat it, and another of each, repeat it again. Basically, if you get 2 of these, you'll be able to destroy a town, 3 of these, and you'll be able to destroy a city. That being said, this combo's great with Badlands from the Jagged Earth and subsequently Nature Incarnate expansions. You can increase this power to 1, so you can be destroying towns on the first, destroying cities on the second, and it's just gravy after that. So definitely keep those Badlands in mind, even though it's not technically a Badlands token user. The second innate power is All-Enveloping Green. It's a fast power instead of slow, and it has 1 range instead of 0. However, you do have to have that Sacred Site. That's what I was talking about with that Choke the Land with green there. And it still has no targeting restrictions in terms of lands. For 1 blue and 3 green, you can defend 2. If you get 1 more of each, then you defend 4 instead. And if you get 1 more water, 1 more plant, and an earth, you also remove a blight in that land. So later on in this game, sure, it gets more and more difficult to regrow, but you can also kind of rewind time by removing blight. If you get this guy online, he's an absolute engine, and that also goes for the cards in his hand. Let me discuss those now. The first one I want to talk about is Fields Choked with Growth. It's a slow power, 1 range, and no targeting restrictions. It's a sun, a water, and a plant, going to help you get to this innate. You can either push 1 town or push 3 Dahan. So this can help with pushing towns in order to be able to destroy them with your first innate, or help you push Dahan in order to do counterattacks with them using your second innate. This combos really well with each one, so definitely keep this one in mind. Even though it's 0 cost, it's great in the late game. Next is Stem the Flow of Fresh Water, that other 0 power that I was talking about. Costs nothing, it's slow, it has a range of 1 from a Sacred Site, just like your Enveloping Green, and it has a water and plant. So this is going to help you do the same thing as the last one. And it also does 1 damage to towns or cities. But if target land is mountains or sands, instead 1 damage to each. So normally it's a little bit difficult to get to the mountains and sands because you have to use your actual growth option there instead of your always. But this does have 1 range, so as long as you're not destroying your own presence too much, you'll be able to reach the second one. And keep in mind that Badlands. I know it doesn't say he's a Badlands user, but this is another power that goes great with them. Next up is a 2 cost fast power called Overgrow in a Night. It gives you a moon and a plant and has a range of 1 that doesn't have to be from a Sacred Site. It doesn't have any targeting restrictions and allows you to add a presence, or if target land has your presence and invaders, get 3 fear. So this is an absolute bomb. This doesn't allow other spirits to add presence. However, you can basically proliferate yourself. If you want to, you can add 3 presence a turn, or you can start adding 2 presence from the first turn, even if you select the gain energy and power play growth option. This is basically your only innate way of adding fear, except for the destruction caused by these 2 abilities. This is great in the early game and late game. Another one that's both flexible early and late, which is definitely a theme of a spread of Rampant Green here. Fantastic ability, and one that helps you out with his first innate power. And fourth, but definitely not least, his most powerful card, and possibly one of the most powerful broken cards in the entire game of Spirit Island, Gift of Proliferation. So because it's a gift, just like all other gifts, its targeting restriction is going to be another spirit. But keep in mind that in a solo game, anytime it says another spirit, you can always select yourself. It is a fast power that costs 1 and gives you a moon and a plant, so going towards that first one. And target spirit adds 1 presence up to 1 range from their presence. This is just straightforward power. Keep in mind this is going to be getting you towards both innates because you can uncover those plants on your presence tracks, and also be able to just absolutely demolish using other spirits. This is probably much better outside of a solo game, because some spirits are absolutely broken on their presence tracks, such as Volcano Looming High or Grinning Trickster Stirs Up Trouble, something like that. If you have those people in your game, absolutely target them with that Gift of Proliferation. It's super powerful and an exponential way of getting more and more out of a spread of Rampant Green. So what are his weaknesses here? Not really much, honestly. The only thing that I see that's weak is you don't innately have an Earth here. And you definitely want to be removing presence in the late game. Because a spread is kind of a tempo spirit, actually, it's probably one of the most tempo spirits in the game, meaning that it constantly wants to be keeping up exactly with the invaders and the adversary, you definitely want to be able to hit these as soon as possible. Because you'll always be selecting this to be able to add growth, you can reclaim cards as many times as you want, really, especially after turn 2 or 3. So don't be afraid to keep using these cards in order to get your innate powers. You'll need a couple more in order to be able to get this third tier, so be drafting for a moon and be drafting for an earth. It's not unreasonable for green to be able to do both of these innate powers over and over again. Some spirits have to really, really hone in on either one of their innates, but green just doesn't have that restriction. If you want to, you can do it all with this spirit. Simic players rejoice. A few minor powers that are great for green are Dark Entangled Woods. It's on exactly what you want to be able to activate both of these innate powers. You add 2 fear, and if it's a mountain or jungle, which you're great at moving into jungles, you defend 3, which is already what you're going to want to be doing. Another one is Nature's Resilience, a defend 6 that gives you what you need in terms of elements, and also can remove another blight if you hit that element that you already want to be hitting. And finally, Sky's Herald, the Season of Return. It gives you another sun, which can hit those major thresholds that need suns later, so definitely draft for this before you draft for those majors. And then it gives you exactly what you need for that first innate there. You can add one of your destroyed presence back onto the board, which is going to be able to help out with the choke the land with green, without having to pay for it if the island is blighted there. And you can gather 2 Dahan and push 1 blight out of the way in order to push it into where you can remove it with this one. Definitely a lot of combos I can see with a spread of Rampant Green, and have a ton of fun growing constantly, destroying your presence and placing it back on the board, all the while creating this perfect engine. There isn't really much to say bad about green, and he does have a couple of aspects. So if you want me to talk about those or another spirit, absolutely let me know in the comments below. If you like this episode, give it a like, hit the subscribe button, and have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see you on the next spirit study.